It is a special Wednesday edition of Championship Rings, fresh off Thanksgiving weekend, fresh off all the important football that went down, fresh off some NBA, fresh off a certain voices in the air, a certain cult of personality. We're going to get to all of it today here. Brandon Lewis, Josh Ungar, as always. Before we start, make sure to subscribe to Championship Rings on YouTube at Championship Rings 216. You can also follow our other social media platforms on Twitter. We're at Rings Champion. Instagram, we are at Rings Champion. Facebook at Rings Champion 216. Josh, I hope your Thanksgiving was great. We have a lot to dive into tonight.
Yes, we sure do. Need
All
to
right.
clear my throat that super quick.
Well, we're going to start it off with what was, according to many people's perspective, the game of the college football season at the time. That being, of course, Michigan 30-24, their victory over the Ohio State Buckeyes. We both pretty much called it. Maybe it was a little bit more high scoring than we thought. I kind of thought 23-20 as opposed to 30-24. But in the end, Michigan ran the football down Ohio State's throat in the second half. And they proved that, and I'll say when we get to our next topic, we talk about the four best teams in college football. I think Michigan proved they are the best team in the country. They had the better quarterback. They had the better roster. And for those Ohio State fans that are making excuses that the only reason why Michigan won the last 2 years because they cheated, you can't say nothing anymore.
No, because of Michigan's 3 consecutive victories in the series, this was the closest one, and this was the one where you legitimately thought, okay, Ohio State might be able to win this. And other than Travion Henderson and Marvin Harrison Jr., did anybody really stand out for Ohio State? No. Whereas with Michigan, you had J.J. McCarthy step up when he needed to. You had Blake Corum. You had, I believe the other running back's name is Donovan Edwards. They were making plays. Michigan's receivers were making plays when called upon to do so. If Michigan needed a big stop on third down defensively, they were able to get those stops. Whereas Ohio State, it didn't seem like they ever really trusted their playmakers. That was my biggest takeaway from it. Did you kind of see it that same way?
Yeah, I mean, from what I saw, again, I was not able to sit down for 3 hours and watch this entire game. I was at family events all day Saturday, so I caught bits and pieces of it. I caught most of the second half, especially the fourth quarter. But it just felt like to me that, again, in the second half, Michigan just really took control. They ran the football, they inserted their dominance, and they forced Ohio State to sort of pass the ball and not really get into their run game. I guess for me, the most interesting aspect of this game, and this is where I don't understand the mentality of college football fans, and you can speak to this, I'm sure, a little bit as a fan of Penn State and what you've gone through with James Franklin. There's a lot of Ohio State fans who think Ryan Day should be fired.
I agree with that statement.
See, and I'm saying time out. The guy loses one game a year. Next year, when we go to the 12-team college football playoff, this game is not going to mean not nearly as much because both of these teams, now we'll see what happens with Michigan, obviously, in the Harbaugh scandal when they're recruiting. But especially for Ohio State, their only potential loss of the season, maybe a better Penn State team, maybe a better Michigan team, they're still going to be in the college football playoff. We know Ryan Day is a really good coach.
They won't.
But Josh, we know Ryan Day is a really good coach. We know they should have won the national championship last year. If they just would have made that field goal against Georgia, they would have obliterated TCU in the national championship. And I'm sorry, but you just knew. Ohio State fans, you had to be realistic. This was not your year. Your quarterback's not better than Michigan. Your offensive line's not better than Michigan. Your defensive line may be similar to Michigan. But Michigan overall has the better roster, and this was their year, and this is their team. Like, are we really going to fire a coach because he loses on average one game a season? I don't understand that mentality.
Okay, here's the thing. When you sign up to be the head coach at the Ohio State University, because you know Ohio State fans are going to lose it if we don't say the Ohio State, what's one of the key things you have to do? Beat the Michigan Wolverines, because that Ohio State-Michigan is one of the top 5 rivalries, in all of sports. I don't know what Christopher Mad Dog Russo was talking about earlier. He did a whole top 5 of rivalries. He had Yankees Red Sox number 1. He had Celtics Lakers 2. Then he had Chiefs Raiders 3. And then he had Duke North Carolina 4. And then he had Texas Oklahoma 5. He didn't even have Michigan Ohio State in his top 5. I'm sorry, Mad Dog, but are you out of your freaking mind?
Okay, I don't care about Mad Dog's rankings of rivalries. The only thing I'll push back on you is all these Michigan fans wanted to run Jim Harbaugh out of town for about 5 years when he couldn't beat Ohio State. And look at your team now. And this is the last year that we're going to have the 14 college football playoff. I'll say this. After this year, I almost guarantee you Ohio State will be one of the 12 teams in the CFP or whatever they're going to call it from now until basically eternity, until they fall off the earth, because that's the way college football works.
Okay, but here's the thing. It's when you sign up, again, I'll say it again. When you sign up to be the head coach at Ohio State, what are your 2 main objectives? Number 1, beat Michigan. Number 2, win national championship.
Okay, that I don't get that mentality.
Are you what?
Me. Number 1, first of all, should be win the national championship. Nothing that shouldn't be beat Michigan. If we go, you're telling me if you go 4-8, let's say, but you beat Michigan, that's a successful season? Hell no. Your brand should be national championship or bust. I understand that. But this year is a different year because you did not have the right quarterback.
Look at Ryan Day's history, though. He didn't beat Georgia last year. I understand that it came down to a field goal. He did not beat Alabama in the national championship.
Okay, but those are better teams.
I'm not done.
They were just better teams.
He did not beat Clemson in the college football
Once again, a better team.
And he's lost to Michigan 3 years in a row.
So let's see. So who had the better quarterbacks in those scenarios? It was Trevor Lawrence against a very young C.J. Stroud, or it might have even been Dwayne Haskins, but I believe it was Stroud. Could have been Fields as well. But in that situation, Trevor Lawrence was the better quarterback. Dabo had the better recruits. Clemson was the better team that year.
That was also the game where, with the controversy because of the holding call and the pass.
Yeah, I remember that. See, Ohio State fans are like San Francisco 49ers fans.
We'll get to the 49ers. We will get there.
They're needy. They're whiny. They think the whole world's against them. Like, remember, Ohio State fans, you guys were laughing, saying, oh, look, they're going to run Jim Harbaugh out of town. Michigan can't beat us. And now the shoe's on the other foot. I guarantee you, in 2 to 3 years, Ohio State will be boat racing Michigan, especially if their head coach is not there at the end of this year. Like, can we just take a chill pill? It's not your year. It's okay. Sometimes you need a little bit of a down year. There's going to be a good recruiting class. They have good 5-star quarterbacks coming on the roster. They should have never got rid of Quinn Ewers, which is a different conversation for a different day. But Ohio State's going to be fine. Stop trying to fire the coach. Like, this isn't Brandon Staley here. We're not talking about an Neptune coach.
Brandon Staley should have been fired after that collapse by the Chargers at the end of the playoff game. But nonetheless, which 4 teams do you think are going to reach the college football playoff?
Okay, right? Josh. So This is the way, this is the only fair way that I think that you can do this. Because it's hard without knowing this scenario. So I'm just gonna lay scenarios out to you.
Go.
I don't understand the sentiment among people that think if Alabama doesn't beat Georgia, they're still not going to get in. If Bama beats Georgia, they're in. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
100%.
They're the number one team in the country, so Bama wins, they're probably in. The issue with that's going to be if Texas wins. Texas has a legitimate gripe because they're the ones that knocked off Alabama, and they would be the Big 12 champion. However, the other issue here is the game Friday night that takes place between Oregon and Washington.
This is the key game, in my opinion.
So this is my thinking. I already mentioned it. If Bama beats Georgia, they're both in. We already know Michigan is in. So that to me is free spots. Georgia's in no matter what. They're the back-to-back defending champions. Their only loss to be to Bama. They have to be in. You cannot not leave Georgia out of the college football playoff.
Yes,
I think it's absolutely insane. No, I don't think you can. I think Georgia's already punched their ticket, win or lose.
I don't.
So I think it comes down then to the winner of Oregon or Washington. Because if Oregon wins, to me, it becomes a discussion. If Oregon and Bama win, it becomes a discussion between Washington and Georgia. And I'm sorry, we all know between those two teams, Georgia is the better football team, which would leave Washington out, which would leave Texas out. Now, if Bama loses to Georgia, and if Oregon loses to Washington, Oregon would be out because they have two losses. Obviously, Bama would be out because they have two losses. You would have Michigan, Georgia, Washington, and I believe that then will lead to Texas if they win, or dare I say, the Ohio State Buckeyes.
No way.
That is the path for Ohio State to get into the playoff. And don't give me Florida State. They have a backup quarterback. I can't believe the committee put them number 4 in the country. Who the hell thinks Florida State is a top 4 team in the country? They're not. They're 7 or 8. They're not number 4. I don't care if they're undefeated. They haven't played anybody.
I fully agree with you. You and I are in lockstep with each other on this one. If Florida State gets into the college football playoff, it's going to be like TCU in the national championship last year. I know that people thought Georgia was going to wreck TCU last season, but to that extent, even I wasn't expecting that. But anyway, even if Florida State wins the ACC championship against Louisville, no, they should not go to the college football playoff. I don't care that they would be undefeated. Hell no. So, my prediction, Georgia at 1, Michigan 2, Washington 3, Texas at 4, which means Alabama gets left out, Oregon gets left out, and Ohio State gets left out. I think there is no way Ohio State is getting into the college football playoff, even if, like, Oregon loses, or Georgia loses.
If Oregon, Texas, and Bama all lose, Ohio State's in. How could they not be in? It would be Washington, Michigan, Georgia, Ohio State. If Texas loses, they're not going to be in. And Ohio State would have the best loss out of all of those teams. Texas, and then obviously Bama with 2 losses at that point. Oregon would have 2 losses at that point. But we all love Oregon, 2 losses, you can't get in. That is the path for Ohio State to get into the playoff. There is a small chance. Now, in my opinion, this is how it's going to go. Number 1 is going to be the Michigan Wolverines. Number 2 is going to be the Oregon Ducks, who defeat Washington in that rematch Friday night.
I can't wait for that game. You have no idea.
Number 3, the University of Alabama. Roll Tide, Crimson Tide. And number 4 will be the matchup that we should have got last year in the championship game, Georgia It will be Alabama against Oregon. It will be Michigan against Georgia. Two SEC teams make it for possibly the final time in the four. Well, it will be in the 4 seed era. Michigan represents the Big Ten, and then obviously Oregon in there with the Pac-12 for basically the last time with the Pac-12.
Yeah, so I agree with you about Michigan being number 1. Georgia is going to be number 2. I've got Washington coming in at number 3, and I've got Texas coming in at number 4.
See, here's my thing, because you don't think Bama's going to beat Georgia. I think Bama is going to do exactly what they did against Auburn. They may not throw a 4th and 20 at the back of the end zone to win a game, but they're going to win the game at the last second, and that means if Bama beats Georgia, they had to be ranked above Georgia. That's why I put Bama at 3, Georgia at 4, and I think you can slide Oregon in at 2. And I think Oregon and Michigan are probably the 2 best teams. The problem's going to be if Oregon loses 2 close games to Washington. I could also see a scenario where, let's say if Georgia beats Bama, even if Texas wins, if that Oregon-Washington game is really close down to the wire again, if Oregon were to win that, you could say, we could put Oregon and Washington both in along with Georgia and Michigan, and that's your 4. There are a lot of different scenarios. But I think even before the Michigan game, by 7 o'clock Saturday night, we will know the 4 teams. Because the 2 results that really matter are Oregon, Washington, Bama, Georgia. Those are the 2 games that really matter to me.
I actually think the Oregon-Washington game is slightly more important in this equation than the Georgia-Alabama game because of everything you've been saying. Like, the gap between Washington and Oregon is so small that whoever wins that game is is probably going to be in.
No, whoever wins is in. Yes. There's no debate. Whoever wins is in. Now,
But do you get where I'm going with that?
Now, the problem is this year we have so many good teams. We've been saying all year long that if Oregon loses, they have to be out just because it wouldn't be fair to put a 2-loss Oregon win team over, let's say, a Texas. But at the end of the day, that's what we have to go. We have to switch gears, though, Josh. We got to move off college football. We got to dive into the NFL because the Houston Texans, your Houston Texans, with C.J. Stroud. I told you the Jaguars were going to win this game. They dominated for most of the game. They decided to give up a late touchdown and almost blow the game late, but Jacksonville was up 10 really late in the third quarter in that game. I thought they controlled the game throughout, and I'm sorry, the Texans are really good. I told you last week they're probably going to make the playoffs, but it's just not their year. They're not there with Jacksonville yet, roster-wise. They need a couple more pieces. C.J. Stroud played a decent game. I didn't think he played great. I thought Trevor Lawrence outplayed him in stretches of the game. I think Houston's a good team. I think they're showing a little bit of signs of regression, barely beating Arizona, losing to Jacksonville, though it was close. I do add them this week, by the way, 3.5 against Denver. I think they need to bounce back. I think they need to beat Denver. But your thoughts about your Texans, who you were so confident going in that they were going to beat the Jaguars. They lost, and they got their kicker.
Yeah, they did. I didn't get to see this game because I don't have NFL Sunday ticket like you do. So I just had to rely on the highlights posted on the NFL YouTube channel, and seeing the highlights on like Sports Center and all that. But yeah, Jacksonville, they showed they were the better team. Was I wrong about everything I was saying with the Texans? Maybe a little bit, but I don't think fully. C.J. Stroud showed that he can put his team in a position to tie or win a game late. It's just that maybe if they were a yard or two closer, the kicker would have made that field goal. We don't know. There's always that what if this had happened or what if that had happened, that type of thing. But I'll tell you what, offensively, Jacksonville proved me wrong because that's where I had the most questions about them. I didn't know if Christian Kirk and Zay Jones and Evan Ingram could step up and, help out Trevor Lawrence because it's felt like at times Trevor Lawrence has had to do it on his own a little bit from my perspective.
Hey
Uh,
Josh, did you forget about Calvin Ridley? That
I
that guy they made at the trade deadline.
yes,
He had a really big game,
yeah,
on Sunday against the Texans. But I
I
told you, man, I understand. CJ Stroud has made Dalton Schultz really good. Noah Brown did not play, but he's done pretty good for them. Tank Dell has been awesome for them. He's on my fantasy team this year. But I just think Jacksonville, with that year of experience, Doug Peterson, who I told you, this is when the Jacksonville Jaguars take off. This is when Doug Peterson's teams take off. Trevor Lawrence is playing better football than he has over the last month. Now, Trevor Lawrence was viewed as a generational prospect out of Clemson. I don't think he's lived up to that Andrew Luck hype that we've gotten from the 2012 draft. I think part of it had to do with his rookie year was such a disaster with a guy that was sitting on a girl's lap in a bar. You might as well throw that rookie season out the window, and Doug Peterson's had to rebuild the culture and all of that. But I'm telling you, this Jag team is good. I think they need to add an extra pass rusher, just like I think Houston needs to add another pass rusher. I think their secondary needs work, just like I think Houston's secondary needs work. I think the thing that I don't love about the Texans, and Stroud's made it work, but their left tackle, is now out for the season. Their offensive line is basically a patchwork. And so CJ's been really good, but how will he play here down the stretch when you're in tough games? If you're not in Houston, if you have to go outside of the cold weather, which he's dealt with a little bit at Ohio State, but not a ton because you don't play a ton of December football in college. So that's where I think Houston's going to win 9, 10 games. As I told you last week, I think the Colts are very sneaky as well in that AFC South, even with Gardner Minshew. But I was a little bit impressed by Houston. But at the end of the day, this game just confirmed my validation that at least for this year, the Jaguars are that team in the AFC South.
yeah, they did. But again, credit to CJ Stroud for leading his team down the field and putting them in a position to potentially tie the game in the final seconds. You can't take that away from him.
No, I was a little bit surprised because Jacksonville, I think you were even sitting there going, they dominated the game for 3.5 quarters. I mean, it really, at halftime, Houston missed a field goal, by the way. Stroud hit a pass to, I believe it was John Menchie, but he did not get his second foot down. It would have been an easier field goal. Kicker missed a field goal at the end of the first half. And as I've said on this show multiple times, and I know everybody disagrees with me in life, but you see it every week in the National Football League. There are only really a couple positions that matter. Number one, we know the quarterback matters. But even before you want to talk about offensive line, before you want to talk about defensive line, wide receiver, can we start talking about freaking kickers? I mean, every one of these games comes down to basically a soccer player. I mean, 10 out of 16 games this past weekend were one possession, and they all mostly come down to a kicker. And if you don't have one, you're not a great team.
Yeah, ask the Baltimore Ravens about how that's working out with Justin Tucker.
I mean, geez, how was that? I mean, Tucker missed a field goal for the first time in his life, and the whole Baltimore sideline looked absolutely shocked.
I know. But we have another huge game this week.
We do.
NFC Championship game rematch. San Francisco 49ers at the Philadelphia Eagles. I will not be able to watch this game because it's on at 4:30 on Fox, which is also when the Browns-Rams game is happening. So, unfortunately, as much as I would love to watch this game, they're not showing it here in Cleveland.
Just like with the Browns and Broncos last week, my two TV setup will be in full force. I'll have the Browns on one TV, I'll have the Birds on another TV, and I'm going to be upfront about this game because you know how much I hate those stinking Niners. If there's one thing Eagles and Cowboys fans can agree on, it's F the San Francisco 49ers.
I'm with you
Now,
there. I'm with you
up,
there.
up front, I'll say this. I think Philly is coming into this game motivated because this is the worst line of a spread I've ever seen. I have no idea how San Francisco is favored by 2.5 in this game. But I do think the Niners have a little bit of an advantage in two ways, and one of them is an off the field advantage. The first one is San Francisco's coming off 10 days rest against Seattle, and Philly's coming off a 5-quarter game against Buffalo, where it took overtime to beat the Bills after Josh Allen played one of the best games he's played since that Kansas City Chiefs wild 2021 playoff game. That looked like the old Josh Allen, and that looked like the old Bills last Sunday. The other aspect of this, I don't know if you remember this from last year, but Nick Sirianni, the Philadelphia Eagles head coach, is very close friends with a guy who just got fired in Carolina named Frank Reich. Nick Sirianni is a very emotional guy. And we saw it in Kansas City. We saw it last year, the Eagles' first couple games after Frank got fired in Indianapolis. Sometimes it takes Sirianni a half to focus. I'm not even joking about this. Sirianni gets way too emotional, and sometimes the game plan doesn't come to him until the second half, and Philly will make adjustments. I think that this game is personal. Deebo Samuel called James Bradbury trash. That did not go over well in the Philadelphia Eagles locker room.
Wait, did you hear what Hassan Reddick was saying about the 49ers whining and complaining? You heard about that, right?
Yes, they need to come to our field and prove it. And, both of these teams don't like each other. This is a real rivalry in the NFL. The difference in this game will be the Eagles' defensive line against the weaker San Francisco offensive line. Hassan Reddick, Josh Sweat, Brandon Graham, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis will be the difference. Jalen Hurts will make a couple more plays than Brock Purdy will. Jalen Hurts will all but wrap up the NFL MVP conversation when he has another sensational second half, and the Philadelphia Eagles will win this game 24-21 in a bloodbath that will once again make my heart race.
This game is huge because if Philly wins, they all but wrap up the number one seed in the NFC, meaning that if you want to get to the Super Bowl, you got to go through Lincoln Financial Field. However, if San Francisco wins, then that puts all the pressure on Philadelphia because next week they have to go to Dallas and play the Cowboys. If the Eagles lose this week, not only does that put the number one seed in question, it puts the NFC East in question because Dallas could come back and win that division.
I'm telling you right now, Dallas is not winning the division. I don't care if we lose both of these games back to back. We're about to get into Dallas's schedule. Their schedule the next 5 games is harder than our back half. Even if we tie, even if we lose these next 2 games, Dallas will lose a game or 2 down the line. Philly will have at least a 1-game advantage over Dallas at the end of the regular season. I pretty much can guarantee you that. As you mentioned, this game to me is more important for San Francisco actually than it is for Philly because Philly can still lose and get the number 1 seed. If San Francisco loses, the number 1 seed is pretty much wrapped up. It's barring a miracle, it's going to Philly. There is a thought in my head where it's like, I don't want to clinch the number 1 seed too early. Sometimes Russ can lead over rest, but this is San Francisco. We don't give a damn. The Niners have made things personal. They think they're so good. And I've been telling you this for 13 weeks. You put pressure on Brock Purdy. He is not the same quarterback. I think what could be a huge deciding factor in this game is 2 things. Number 1, by all reports, Dallas Goddard is trying to come back and play in this game. It was originally not supposed to play in this game, but he's going to try to play, which will open up the passing game if he's able to go. It's 50-50 right now. The other thing is, Lane Johnson was severely missed, especially in that first half against Buffalo. He woke up the Sunday of the Bills game feeling not right in his groin. There's no structural damage. It was just, sore, bruise. He wanted to play it safe. He was a limited participant in practice today, but all signs say he is going to play on Sunday. That will be the difference, especially when you have Chase Young and Nick Bosa now on the same side for San Francisco. And don't forget, this is the third time this year the Eagles will have to go up against Chase Young.
Yes. So let me ask you this. The Eagles have been in a lot of close games lately.
Yes, they have.
They were in an overtime game last week against Buffalo. You talked about it. They were in a really close game against Kansas City. They were in a close game against Dallas. You get my point. Do you think that them being in all of these close games will catch up to them at some point?
In the regular season, potentially. Listen, as much as a fan I am, as much as I'm going to pick them to win every game, they probably will lose to Dallas, maybe in Dallas. I already had them automatically taking an L in Seattle because I already told you we can never win in Seattle to save my life. If we win in Seattle, I'll drop to my knees and I'll pray to God because Seattle is our house of horrors. I don't care what team we've had. I don't care if we're 12-2 and Seattle's 2-10. Seattle just finds a way to beat us. I can't recall the last time we beat the Seahawks. They are our kryptonite. Oh, like Denver for a lot of these years been the Browns' kryptonite, as I told you when we did the show last Tuesday. But in the postseason, when you have gone through Kansas City and you've won close games, when you've gone against Buffalo, you win a close game. When you go against Dallas, you win a close game. That shows you, and this team now, in my opinion, believes they can win no matter what deficit they are in. That will prove vital in the postseason, especially if they have to go against San Francisco, who I am assuming will be back in Philadelphia for the NFC Championship game, because I just think those are the two best teams in the NFC. I've said it all year. If Dallas somehow were to beat San Francisco in the second round, because by the way, I think that's where we're probably heading as well. We'll see. But I do think that in the regular season could have cost them a game, yeah. But I think playoff time, it's showing that, hey, we know how to win any way means possible. Last thing I'll say is, can anybody say Shaq Leonard? Because I think that by this time next week, Shaq Leonard will not be a Dallas Cowboy because he has a relationship with Nick Sirianni from his days back with the Colts. And I think the Eagles, now that Zach Cunningham has gone down with an injury, Nakobe Dean has gone down to an injury, I would love to add Shaq Leonard to this football team for himself to get a chance at the Super Bowl ring.
Okay, before we move on to talking about the rest of Week 13, I briefly want to talk about that Shaq Leonard stuff. I don't get this. The Colts released him. He's in the stadium, like the following game or whatever, as a fan, and he gets a tribute video and like a whole standing ovation. It makes no freaking sense.
Okay, I did not see that he was in the stadium as a fan. I have to admit that.
I think he was in like a Lowe's or something, but regardless, it didn't make any sense. Like, you could have just kept him on the team.
From what I've heard, his playing time is diminished. He's barely played this year.
I don't know that for sure, but still, like, that whole situation just did not make sense. But the one final thing I want to say about this Eagles-Niners game is Philly, while the pressure is on San Francisco to win this game, I think the Eagles need to win this game, if that makes sense. And the reason I'm saying that is because you want to get the NFC Championship game in Philadelphia.
I completely agree with you, but I also believe this. If the Eagles were to lose this game, they will still get the number one seed in the NFC. because I don't think San Francisco is going to go undefeated the rest of the way, which would be essentially what they would have to do. Philly would have to lose, at least one more game, which again is possible. But I don't think San Francisco is going to go undefeated with their schedule the rest of the way. And you have, I think, actually, the bigger threat to the number one seed in the NFC is the team that's not involved in this game, and that's Detroit. Even though they lost to Green Bay, their schedule sets up really well for down the stretch. And as you mentioned, we're going to get to Green Bay. Before we get there, though, we got to talk about the other Week 13 NFL games. As always, I'll go first. I'll be honest. There's not a ton of games that really piqued my interest this week. I know you probably have Chiefs Packers on your list. I got Kansas City easily winning that game. We'll talk about Green Bay. They may make the playoffs, but I think the NFC is so weak at the bottom, it really doesn't make a difference if they do or don't. Kansas City is going to bounce back. I think they win the game. I only have 3 other games on my list this week. One of them is obviously the Thursday night game taking place between the Seahawks and the Cowboys. I'm very fascinated in that.
Seattle, you are proving me wrong every single week now. What the hell?
Yeah, they're probably going to get blown out, but we'll see if Seattle can bounce back. I have Lions at Saints because I want to see how Detroit bounces back from that loss. Jared Goff in a dome. He will be comfortable. And the Saints, did you know the last 3 people to throw touchdown passes for the Saints? I'll give you a hint. It's not Derek Carr. 2 were thrown by Jameis Winston, and 1 was thrown by Taysom Hill. The Saints are not scoring touchdowns. They're kicking field goals. Their offense is bad, and I hate to say it because I want to shake Arthur Smith every time I watch the Falcons. But I think the Falcons are the best team in that division. Oh my God, help us all! And then the last game on my list, the LA Rams. They're starting to gain some momentum. They're starting to look good. They're starting to look like a playoff team somehow in the NFC. And they are going up against Mr. I'm running the ball down Denver's throat. Let me call a reverse jet sweep that the fumble the ball. How can I ask you this? We're going off topic because I need to ask you one question before I get to your games. There are fans in Cleveland that think Kevin Stefanski deserves Coach of the Year. And I'm sitting here saying, I would get him next week if I got the chance.
Yeah. I don't know. I didn't get to fully watch that game because I had to get to Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse to work the Cavs game that night. But and I refused to go back and watch that game. But I did see the highlights. What was the play calling? Like, overall, what the hell was the play calling in that game? I don't know.
By the way, it sounds like we're going to get to see Joe Flacco start on Sunday.
Yay!
He hasn't been able to move for 3 years. Is he still going to be able to run those bootleg Stefanski life? Maybe we'll have to call 10 tight end screens instead of 4.
Dude, I honestly, looking at the Browns' schedule the rest of the way, I think they're only going to win 2 or 3 more games.
Like we all thought remember we had this debate 2 weeks ago? We both looked at the Browns schedule. We said, oh, that's a playoff team. I'm sorry. I'm looking at their schedule now saying, wait a minute. This may not be a playoff team.
Yeah. I mean, they've completely fluked their way to 7-4. But look at their schedule the rest of the way. Rams this week. I say that's a loss.
Probably.
Next week, home against Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jaguars.
I mean, if they had a quarterback, I told you, I thought that was a win. Now I don't think it's a win anymore.
Yeah. Week 15 against the Chicago Bears.
That should be a win.
That's a win. Week 16 at the Houston Texans. That's a loss.
I think it's a loss.
Week 17, Thursday night football against the Jets. I think we'll win that game.
I agree.
And then week 18 at the Cincinnati Bengals. Neither team is going to be playing for anything, so the Browns will...
I think that's a win. I think that gets you to 10 wins, which may get you in. It's going to be really close. it may get you in the AFC.
Yeah, but getting back to the question at hand, what other great games are there in Week 13? I'm surprised you didn't have this game on your list. Denver Broncos at the Houston Texans.
See, to me, because Denver to me is not very good. I don't care if they won 6 in a row. They don't throw the ball down the field. They don't score a lot of touchdowns. The Browns were whipping their ass in the run game until they decided to call jet sweeps. Like, I think this should be like a 4 or 5 point favorite, and I banged on Houston a lot over the last couple of weeks with you. I think they're the better team. I don't think Denver can keep up in a shootout with Houston.
Right now, Houston is a 3.5 point favorite.
Yeah, and I took them this week in Brandon's best bets because I'm like, listen, at very worst, they may lose by a half a point. They may beat Denver by 3 at the very worst. But Denver's winning a lot of these games because they're forcing turnovers. The only way is going to be if Vance Joseph's defense can force CJ Stroud into mistakes, which, by the way, he has been prone to do over the last couple of weeks.
Yes. So I have Broncos Texans. I agree with you about Lions Saints. I have no idea what the Saints are offensively. I think this might be Dennis Allen's last year as the New Orleans Saints head coach.
Shouldn't even have been the head coach this year. The Saints need to blow it up. I'm sorry, Saints fans. Get realistic. If you want to be good for the next decade, take a year off.
I actually do not have Chiefs Packers on my list because I have no idea why that game is on Sunday Night Football. It's not interesting to me at all, even though we'll get to Green Bay and whether they can make the playoffs or not. I'll tell you a sneaky good game, actually. The Tennessee Titans somehow, someway, keep winning at home at Nissan Stadium in Nashville. They are hosting the Indianapolis Colts this week.
The Colts. Yeah, I mean, there's some intrigue there because I like the Colts. I think they're the better team. Will Levis is not it for me. He has not shown flashes for me besides, maybe the first time he came in. They barely beat Carolina, who then had to go out and fire their coach. What a freaking disaster that team is. By the way, I'm still not giving up on Bryce Young because he has better stats this year than Trevor Lawrence did his rookie year. No, nobody realizes that.
Wait, okay. Let's forget the rest of the Week 13 games. I want to talk about this. All right? Let's just stick with this for a few minutes.
Go ahead. We got 3 minutes on the clock, so just roll.
Okay, I'm going rogue on this. Did you hear David Tepper's press conference comments? He's like, we thought we could get to 2 because we thought Houston would take Bryce Young and we would take CJ. Did you hear all that stuff?
Yeah, I heard it. And listen, everybody in Carolina, the building all knew that Tepper wanted Bryce Young. Now, I do think that everybody was in agreement. I think people did like Bryce Young. I think there was some concern about CJ Stroud coming out because of the poor testing he did. Now, again, does CJ Stroud look like the better quarterback right now? Yes. I don't know what the hell is going on in Carolina. But I'll say this. I think Frank Reich is a very smart head coach that will find his way somewhere, maybe not as a head coach again, but as an offensive coordinator. You know the guy I want to see Carolina go out and get?
Ben Johnson, the Lions.
Ben Johnson, the Lions offensive coordinator. I think it would be perfect for Bryce Young. I think you can get him back in that scheme. I think Carolina this offseason, their defense is good. Screw the defense. Don't draft anybody on the defense side of the ball until late in the draft. Use your money in free agency. Rebuild your offensive line. Spend money on some wide receivers like Jacksonville did with Kirk and Ingram and all those guys before they got Ridley just for Trevor Lawrence. Rebuild your offensive line. Get the kids some weapons, and then let's make an assessment on Bryce Young. That's all I'm saying here. I'm not giving up on the kid who, to me, is a very good quarterback because every time I watch Carolina, I turn them on a little bit, against Tennessee. I'm saying this is the Titans. And, I mean, Josh, By the time he drops back in the shotgun, he is almost on the ground. He has no chance to survive. I don't care if it's CJ Stroud. I don't care if it's Tom Bleep and Brady back there. With that offensive line that I thought was maybe better, and that's why I overestimated Carolina this year, there is no chance to succeed. I don't care who the coach is. I don't care what the play calling is. I don't care who the quarterback is.
So, look at what's happened with the Panthers since David Tepper has taken over as their owner.
I think Jimmy Haslam-esque.
It's like 6 head coaches in 3 years. How are you supposed to be a good team when you're constantly having turnover like that? Like, success doesn't happen instantaneously. Look at what the Rooneys have done in Pittsburgh. The Steelers have only had, what, like 6 head coaches in 100 years or something?
3.
Oh, okay, you get my point, though. They went from Chuck Noll to Bill Cowher to Mike Tomlin. That's why the Steelers are one of the most accomplished teams in NFL history. And I don't care what the record books say. I will continue to say it. The Pittsburgh Steelers are the only team in the NFL with 6 Super Bowls. I do not count all 6 Super Bowl championships for the New England Patriots. I don't care what the record books say. I will stick to my guns on that one.
Josh, from one historic franchise of the Pittsburgh Steelers to another in the Green Bay Packers. Now, you asked the question, do the Packers have a path to the playoffs? I mean, they do. Now here's the thing. A lot of people say, oh, Brandon, are you going to admit you're wrong on Jordan Love yet? No, I'm not. I don't think I'm wrong yet on Jordan Love. Has he gotten better over the last 2 weeks? Yeah. Did he surprise me against the Lions? Yeah. Do I count the other game against Brandon Staley? No, I don't, because he's facing Brandon freaking Staley. But the Packers somehow, some way are in the thick of it at the bottom here of the NFC playoff picture. Now, I think they're going to get destroyed by Kansas City Sunday night. I think it's going to be like 30-10. I think it's going to be a rough night for Jordan Love and crew. If he plays well against Kansas City, I might come on Brandon's World and Championship rings next week and say there might be something here. But I'm telling you, man, I saw Jordan Love when he was at Utah State. He went up against my Kent State Golden Flashes in the COVID year against Dustin Crum, our great quarterback, threw for a lot of yards at Kent State. You know where Dustin Crum is now? He's the quarterback of the fan-controlled football league, and he outdueled Jordan Love in a bowl game. It was some kind of PlayStation Bowl or something like that in December 2020. Jordan Love, he's not special. He can make throws. To me, he's a good backup in the NFL. The Packers, they don't have Aaron Jones right now. I don't love their receivers. They have a pretty good offensive line. They have pretty good tight ends. Their defense is decent enough to create turnovers, but they're just hard to watch. And if that team somehow makes the playoffs, they're going to get obliterated in the wild card round, probably by San Francisco or Detroit, whoever would be in that 2 seed.
Yeah. Do I think Green Bay's going to catch Detroit and win the division? No. But I do think the Packers have a legitimate path to the playoffs here. That's why I asked the question. Also based on, what their defense did against Detroit last week, which I'm still confused by that. Like, I thought Detroit's offensive line was one of the best in the league.
Yeah, I don't get it. This is why I think the Lions are still one of the pretenders. That's why I told you before the year, I had Dallas over Detroit. I remember me and you went back and forth on Dallas. You had Seattle ranked over them. You had Detroit ranked over them. And I'm saying, timeout. Dallas wins a lot of games. We're seeing it again this year. And the Lions, when they're a heavy favorite against their division rival, they come out on Thanksgiving not ready to play. I didn't understand that at all. And, Green Bay, Matt LaFleur is a decent enough coach where you can win games. I thought they'd win 5 or 6 games this year. They're going to win more than that. But Jordan Love, he's not it. I don't see wow. There's nothing that I see that goes, that's impressive. I say, okay, that's pretty good. That's nice. I don't see a guy that can carry you and win you games.
That's fair. Um, you were talking about their wide receivers and how you're not very impressed with them. Um, I like what I see from Christian Watson. I like what I see from Romeo Doubs. They both seem to be developing chemistry with Jordan Love. Um, sure, he's not like a great quarterback yet, but I don't think he has to be. Sometimes you can rely on your skill position players to take you where you want to be. And
My argument with Jordan Love is this: a lot of people treat him like a rookie. He's not a rookie. He's a year 4 player. I don't care if he's sat behind Aaron Rodgers for 3 years. You should be ready to go, and I need to make a decision on you now because your contract kicks in a year. It's not like Justin Fields. We've got 4 years to evaluate, what he can do in Chicago. This is like Jordan Love. You're in the same, basically you're a year ahead of Justin Fields. You're in the same draft class as Jalen Hurts. Let's go, let's play. And I don't see the juice. And by the way, the college football schemes in the NFL are so eerily similar now to the ones that are in the NFL that it's an easier transition, which is why I'm a lot harder now on young quarterbacks.
okay, so you look at the Packers' schedule down the stretch. It's really not that daunting.
It's not.
They host the Chiefs this week. Kansas City is a minus 6-point favorite. Understandable. They're the defending Super Bowl champions. They've got Patrick Mahomes. They have Travis Kelce. Okay, fair. But then next week, they have Monday Night Football against the New York Giants. Why is that game on Monday Night Football?
Well, it's a doubleheader game, which is a little bit good because Titans Dolphins is the other game.
Meh. After that, they have the Packers host the Buccaneers. That's a win. Then the Packers are at the Panthers. Easy win. Then they're at the Vikings. Okay, that could be a little bit tricky. And then they close the season out by hosting the Bears. That's a win.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of easy wins potentially on that schedule.
So Green Bay, realistically, yes, they have a path to the playoffs.
They're what, 5-6 right now? I think they can finish 9-8.
Something like that, yeah.
Well, they have an easy schedule. The team that does not is the Dallas Cowboys. Talk about Josh, their 5-game gauntlet coming up.
Yes. So this game on Thursday against Seattle, it could be a little bit tricky, although Seattle has been struggling as of late. So we'll see. But listen to this upcoming schedule for the Cowboys. Host Seattle this week. Host the Eagles next week on Sunday Night Football. At Buffalo, at Miami, host Detroit on Monday Night Football.
Woo-wee. Which will be Saturday, but by the way, because that Monday night game is a part of ESPN. It's Saturday, December 30th, because that Monday, January 1st, will be the college football semifinal games. So they're giving the ESPN crew that game on Saturday, even though it's a Monday night football game. It is a Saturday game, though.
Either way, though, that is one hell of a gauntlet.
It is. So I think that they're going to beat Seattle.
I would agree with you. Dallas has completely proven me wrong. I had a lot of questions about them in the beginning. I didn't trust Mike McCarthy as the head coach.
By the way, I still don't. I told you about Dallas. It's all about the playoff. I told you exactly what Dallas is. They're going to win 12 games, and they're going to get second rounded. I'm still on that prediction. They may make the NFC Championship game, which is what I predicted at the beginning of the year, and lose to Philly, but we will see, obviously, depending on matchups. I think they lose. I'm going to skip the Philly game because I think that's a toss-up. I'm going to say they lose to Buffalo and Miami back-to-back. I think going down to Miami is really hard, and I think Buffalo is actually hitting their stride now with new offensive coordinator Joe Brady. I think that's 2 losses back-to-back. I think they're a little bit better than Detroit. I think they win that game, and I think they'll finish by beating Washington. So that's 3 wins, 2 losses. The swing game is that game that's Sunday night, December 10th, at home against the Philadelphia Eagles. And again, because I have Dallas losing twice, I think at the most Philly loses twice the rest of the year. I don't think that will ultimately decide the division. I think Dallas can win that game, and I think no matter what, the way I look at things right now, you should essentially bank that the Dallas Cowboys will be the number 5 seed in the NFC, taking on the winner of the NFC South, which right now, as I said earlier, somehow looks like the freaking Atlanta Falcons with Desmond Ritter.
Yeah, I don't know, but um, a lot of what could be on the line for that Eagles Cowboys game depends on what happens on Sunday in Lincoln Financial Field between the 49ers and Eagles. If the Eagles win, then that next week's game in Dallas doesn't have a lot of meaning.
Well, it has a lot of meaning to Dallas because Philly could run with the number 1 seed if they were to beat Dallas, I believe, or at least the division.
Okay, but still, like, it wouldn't have. Do you kind of get where I'm going with that? Whereas,
not really, because it's Cowboys. What did you tell me about Ohio State, Michigan? Everybody in Ohio State, you have to be Michigan. Cowboys Eagles is easily a top 3 rivalry in the NFL. It's going to be over the next decade. These two teams, and trust me, I'm on one side of the rivalry, so maybe I'm a little bit biased. When the schedule comes out, we immediately look at the schedule. We look and see when those 2 Cowboys games are. We print out the schedule, we circle it, and we write F Dallas on it.
I bet you Steelers fans and Ravens fans do the same thing for their respective team schedules. But anyway, to go back to our earlier conversation, if the Eagles lose this week against the 49ers, then that Sunday night game takes on a whole new meaning. So,
see, I disagree because I feel like, God forbid, we lose both those games. I'm still winning the NFC East.
Well, we will see. But
by the way, this will be, in my opinion, the first year we have a repeat champion in the NFC East for the first time since Philly did it in 2004.
Okay. But speaking of Dallas, we're going to switch to the NBA now.
We are.
Mark Cuban is selling a majority stake in the Dallas Mavericks, and it is to the Adelson family. I don't know much about them, but they are the majority shareholders of the Las Vegas Sands.
Okay, so
I guess is a casino.
So this is why I don't think it's that big of a story, because Mark will still have majority control in basketball operations. If he was giving up basketball operations, I think it'd be a much bigger story. There's a lot of speculation out there. Again, regardless of how you feel about your politics, your Democrat, Republican, Independent, whatever, there's a lot of speculation out there that Mark Cuban could be running for president in 2024. I don't think that's the case. He's also leaving Shark Tank, by the way, for all you Shark Tank fans out there.
Which I am very sad about, because he's my second favorite shark behind Robert Herjavec. So I'm very sad about that.
And there's a fun fact for you, but I think it's more you mentioned these new owners have a lot to do, and being in the casino industry. I think Mark Cuban's going to pretty much open up a sports betting place in Dallas. That's what I think he's doing with a partnership here with these new owners. And let's be honest, even if he doesn't have a majority stake in the team anymore, what really matters is who's running the basketball operation. Let's take, for example, our team. Dan Gilbert is still the majority owner. He's not really involved in the day-to-day anymore. It's more Kobe Altman and JB Bickerstaff running the show. So Mark Cuban is still writing the checks, basically, when it comes to that. Deciding Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic are going to work. We'll see how it all works out. They've had a pretty good season here to start. But Dallas, really, ever since they won the 2011 championship, Dirk Nowitzki, Jason Terry, Jason Kidd, those guys knocking off that Heat team, they've been a very good team, but they have never really gotten back to that premier, I would say, franchise that they were in the early 2010s, even with Luka Doncic.
I would agree with you. I do think this is a bigger story than what you think. Although I understand your perspective on it, I also agree with you that I don't think he's running for president in 2024. I think it's too short of a turnaround, being that the calendar is about to flip to 2024 in just a few weeks. But I do think it's interesting that he's maybe taking a bit of a step back. I hope, though, that even with this move, he's still around in the NBA. I get it. He's still going to be like doing basketball operation stuff, but a huge thing is when you go to a Mavericks game at American Airlines Center, you know that Mark Cuban is going to be like down on the sidelines or like have a seat
Yeah,
up.
I don't know about that because in the interview I read, he does want to spend a lot more time with his family. Back in the day, all of his kids were the same age. Now his daughter's in college, his other kids in high school. They're at different places. He wants to spend more time with them. I think that has something to do with this as well. Um,
Sure, I agree.
I'm going to throw this out there because this was a theory that was brought up by somebody. I'm not going to name the person. But is it possible that Mark Cuban knows what the NBA is getting from its media rights deal that's supposedly, happening right now? They're negotiating with a lot of these networks. If he knows what they increase in, the old adage, buy low, sell high. If he knows what the NBA is getting and all these teams are going to be worth more, potentially selling off now and getting that bigger profit when the new TV deals come in, that is a very smart investment as well.
I hadn't even thought about that, but that is a very plausible idea, which just speaking about that new media rights deal, I heard that once the NBA locks up that new media rights deal that you were just speaking about, they're going to look to expand and add Las Vegas
We just had
and
this
Seattle.
conversation. We just had this conversation. I don't know if you recall a couple weeks ago. We were
No, I
talking
know.
about.
I'm just bringing that back up because you brought up the new media rights deal.
Yeah, I'm very fascinated to see what goes on with that. But going to the current NBA,
Yes.
there are a couple of teams that are a surprise this year. The Orlando Magic are somehow right now the number 2 seed in the Eastern Conference. Houston, they're right in the thick of it. I believe they're the 7 seed right now in the Western Conference. Now, I
No, they're
predicted.
the 8th seed right now.
Okay. Well, I predicted both of these teams. I thought Houston in the West, I thought they were going to be good. I weren't sure if they were going to be a play-in team because of the competition in the West. I thought Orlando was going to be a play-in team. I love the young talent they have there. I think they just need to put it all together. I said last year, I felt like Orlando was going to become the new Cleveland Cavaliers. Remember when the Cavs came out of nowhere a couple years ago? Evan Mobley, Darius Garland, Jared Allen. They took a
Yeah.
big leap. And then, obviously, I think Orlando is on that same path. Do I think Orlando's going to be able to keep this up? No. I don't even remember the Cavs from a couple of years ago. They were at this point in the year, the 2 seed or the 3 seed. They ended up dropping out all the way to the play-in because of injury and other factors.
Right.
Listen, I don't think Orlando's better than Milwaukee. I don't think they're better than Boston, Philly, Miami, Cleveland. So I don't think this is going to last, but it's a fun story. Houston's probably right where Orlando will be. So to answer the question, I'm a little bit more surprised by Orlando, but in the long run, this is why I keep telling you, man, November basketball is a different sport once you get to February, March, and April.
No, and you're right there. But just looking at the standings, I wasn't expecting either of these teams to be where they are in their respective conferences. That's why I asked the question. But you could kind of see the pieces falling into place for Orlando going
Oh, you
back to
could see it last year.
exactly. That's what I'm saying. With Houston, I'm a little bit more surprised by the Rockets right now because the Rockets over the past couple seasons have just been absolutely terrible.
No, but they've been stockpiling players. I mean, Kevin Porter Jr., Jabari Smith.
Yeah,
There's a reason why James Harden wanted to go there.
yeah, but still, like even though they did end up getting Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks, but even still, even with those additions, I'm like, okay, the Rockets, they might be a fringe play-in tournament team at best. I didn't think.
That's what they will end up being, by the way, because that's what they are right now.
Okay, but still, right now, they're an 8 seed, right on the outside of the playoff picture looking in. If a couple things go their way, they could be a top 6 seed right now. That's not to say they will be a top 6 seed. I'm not saying that. But the fact that Houston has put themselves in a position to potentially be a top 6 seed, that's why I would say they're a little bit more surprising.
Yeah, my golden rule in the NBA when it comes to standings has always been I don't look at the standings until December 25th, Christmas Day.
Yeah.
That's I say the same about baseball, Josh. So it's not no offense about the NBA. You know when I look at the MLB standings, June 1st. That's when the MLB season sort of starts to me. That's when you know who you are. Takes you a couple months to understand your rotation, your lineup. Same thing with basketball. It takes you to about Christmas to understand
Yeah, it takes you to
games.
yeah.
And
I think we're experiencing some technical difficulties on Brandon's end. Um, you good over there?
hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I think
What are
you're.
technical difficulties
I
here
think
live on Championship Rings?
yes, we are. But we're gonna move on. No, not that. There we go. Okay. For
Nope,
the
we're not talking about that yet. Okay. We are back. For the record, we are back. We can just morph this into one video. Sixers Celtics, they're facing off for the third time.
yes, already the third time this season they are facing off this season but this will be the first matchup in Boston. They are 1-1 on the season in the season series with Philly taking the first game, Boston coming back and winning the second game. I shocked that this is already going to be the third game in the regular season series. I would have thought they would spread this regular season series out, have it be like do one game in like November, in mid-November, do the next game in like January or whatever, and then have the final two be in March and April, so that you can have these two teams facing off when it really counts, like what you were just saying in the previous segment.
Yeah, I mean, it really does. It's a weird scheduling, Kirk. I don't get it. You're not going to get, as I keep telling you, you're not going to get a lot out of these November matchups. When both of these teams, I'm assuming, will be in the market for a move at the trade deadline that could completely change their team.
Yes, but regardless, it's still an intriguing game because the Sixers and Celtics, they both feel like true contenders in the Eastern Conference, along with the Milwaukee Bucks. I would say they are the three top teams in the East right now, despite Orlando being the current number 2 seed in the Eastern Conference standings.
Yeah, I would agree. And I don't even trust Philly yet. They got to show me they can beat Boston in a 7-game series.
I would agree with you. I mean, look at what Jason Tatum did in Game 7 against the 76ers last year and how Joel Embiid and James Harden did not show up for the Sixers in Game 7 last year. That was absolutely atrocious.
Well, as I told you, it really did not matter if they showed up or not. Didn't Philly win Game 5? If I recall, they were up 3-2 in that series. They went into Game 6. It was in Philadelphia, and Boston came back on them and won that game. And at that moment, I know we were not doing a show yet, but I came on Brandon's World the next day, and I said, "That's it. The series is over. Boston's going to beat Philly by 30 because the Sixers." Oh, I like the Spurs. You mentioned the Ray Allen shot, 2013 Game 6, Spurs Heat. When Ray Allen hit that shot, the Spurs were deflated for Game 7.
Oh,
The
yeah.
Sixers were deflated for Game 7 against Boston. So you can almost disqualify that performance, in my opinion, because it didn't matter if Boston put me and you out there. We could have beat the Sixers that night.
On that note, super quick, I would also throw Draymond Green suspension for Game 5 of the finals. Talking about that whole teams getting
Yeah, but there's
inflated
a
there.
difference between there's 3 games left and there's 1 game left.
Sure, that's fair, but I don't think once Draymond was suspended for Game 5, I don't think the Warriors recovered. So to me, it's the same
I
idea.
agree, but at least they competed hard in Game 7. Game 7, as we know, was obviously a back and forth affair.
Sure, but yeah, I don't like that. This is already the third game between the Sixers and Celtics. I wish it was more spread out and we could get this matchup, on Christmas, for example, and then the fourth game could be in March or early April, so we can see what these teams look like going into playoff time. And maybe it could be if Boston wins this game, for example, then Philly gets the 4th seed or whatever, and Boston ends up as the 2 seed.
I'll be honest. I think one of the reasons why the NBA did not schedule great games for Christmas this year, they are hurt that the NFL has taken over their day, and they know it, and there's nothing that they can do about it.
Yeah. I'll say this. As a Cavs fan, I wish we were I wanted to host a Christmas Day game. And you know who I wanted the Christmas Day game to be against?
The New York Knicks.
No.
The
Jason
Boston Celtics.
Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and the Boston Celtics.
See, and as a bigger fan, obviously, the NFL than the NBA, I was hoping the Cavs did not get a Christmas Day game because I will not be watching Christmas basketball. It will be 3 games of football, and the NBA can excuse me, and they can get their lowest ratings ever again. And I'll see the NBA in February when the Super Bowl ends.
Fair enough.
Josh, should we get into the thing that I am still absolutely buzzing about? I tried to tell you when everybody said it wasn't happening, when everybody said it was dead, everybody said he was the devil. I said, no. WWE is putting it out there because they want you to believe he's not showing up because deep down they already know he's coming. He's coming to Survivor Series. He's going to show up at the end of the night, and that crowd roared like I never heard a crowd roar in a long time. Shake Magnet Punk, Phil Brooks, CM Punk, as he said on Monday Night Raw, is home. And his AEW tenure is completely already forgotten about in many fans' minds because he is exactly where he belongs. This is where he should have returned 2 years ago. Everything feels right in the world. CM Punk is back, the man that hears voices in his head. Randy Orton got an incredible pop before delivering an incredible RKO to JD McDonough on the top of WarGames. A Survivor Series with a perfect pay-per-view. WWE Monday Night Raw was a really good show. It is feeling so good right now. Randy Orton and CM Punk are back in the WWE, and I cannot be more happier. I'm still buzzing 4 days later.
Are you planning on going to Monday Night Raw on December 11th?
Well, I was before this news. I already had my tickets. I had them immediately when it came out. I will be there, and I cannot wait.
Hell no, I am not going to Monday Night Raw on December 11th at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. I'm not going to get into the reasons why, but because it's personal for me. But yeah, first I want to talk about Randy Orton's return. I loved the way they had Randy come back. Because first, Rhea comes out with the Money in the Bank briefcase, and it looks like Damien's going to cash in, and we were going to have a championship match. And then I hear voices in my head, starts playing, and there's Randy Orton, and it stopped the Money in the Bank cash in, and it was great. But then at the end, CM Punk came back. I am not happy about this. Friday Night SmackDown just became a much better show to watch over Monday Night Raw. I am not going to watch Monday Night Raw. One, because the WarGames storyline between the Judgment Day, Cody Rhodes, Sami Zayn, Jey Uso, and Seth freaking Rollins is over. Like, that feud is over, so so there's not really any intriguing storylines. 2, Cody Rhodes is on Monday Night Raw, and you know my feelings towards him. And 3, CM Punk is now on Monday Night Raw. Yeah, Friday Night SmackDown just became a whole lot more interesting. Thank you very much.
Oh, Josh, you are a funny man. You are a funny man. This is why I love doing the show with you. The thing we both disagree on the most, and it's really no surprise because the thing everybody disagrees on the most is professional wrestling because it is a different taste for everybody. Everybody has different flavor. Everybody likes different things. But this to me feels very Cody Rhodes esque. Remember when Cody Rhodes left AEW? He was essentially booed out of the building. Nobody liked Cody Rhodes. WWE people did not want to see Cody Rhodes come back. And the minute he popped for a WrestleMania 38, he was, basically held with open arms and became one of the biggest baby faces in the company. I'm not saying CM Punk is going to become one of the biggest baby faces in the company. But CM Punk, for right now, is being universally praised to the point where I think if you put him with Seth Rollins right away, people are going to be cheering for Punk over Seth Rollins more likely than not. I do think Punk will eventually turn heel. I think we get Punk and Rollins at WrestleMania 40. But I think CM Punk for this return, like people feel a lot of the same sentiment as the way I feel. And that is the fact that, yes, he did return to AEW in 2021. That's all great. But with all the drama and all the backstage and all the issues that happened in AEW, let's just forget it ever happened. This is what people really wanted in 2021. And the fact that Triple H, the man that basically caused him to quit along with Vince McMahon in Cleveland, out of all places, in 2014, January 27th. I was there. I was in the building that night when he walked out right before the show. And the fact that he will be here in a couple weeks again just seems surreal.
I understand that. First of all, I think even with the loss of Punk, AEW is going to be just fine.
I don't know about that.
We re-signed MJF. We brought in Will Ospreay. I know that the Young Bucks are being a little bit petty right now. I get it, but they'll come around. It'll be okay. Full Gear was a fantastic pay-per-view. Wrestle Dream was great. I think AEW is going to be just fine.
By the way, I know that this is off topic. I do not like the way Adam Copeland is being booked in AEW. I don't understand the feud with Christian. I think having a match on Dynamite, I would have preferred to have it at Full Gear. I think you're throwing away a free match on television. I think you need to build it up to the next pay-per-view. I think it's Revolution in February if you're going to do that.
No, it's World's End on December 30th.
I don't like giving away this marquee match on a random show on Dynamite on December 6th. I don't get it. I don't understand it.
I think I know what they're doing because that show is going to be in Montreal at the Bell Center. So what they're probably going to do is have Adam Copeland win the TNT title there, and then they'll probably build up to the rematch at World's End on December 30th, which we already have a match confirmed for that pay-per-view. This is not something AEW and Tony Khan usually does. Usually, it's like 2 weeks before the pay-per-view, and it's like, oh shit, we actually have to put matches on the card. And that's when you start hearing, oh, this match is happening and this match is happening.
Yeah, it's the old Vince McMahon. I keep telling you, Tony Khan is literally young Vince. That's what he is.
But we already have a match confirmed. It will be MJF defending the AEW World Championship in his hometown of Long Island, New York, against Samoa Joe. These two already had a match against each other at Grand Slam in Arthur Ashe Stadium in New York City, where MJF successfully retained the AEW World Championship. I think MJF, despite his torn labrum, I think MJF is going to retain the AEW World Championship. and then we will go into Revolution in 2024, and that is where the devil story will kick in. Who do I think the devil is? Adam Cole.
Hey, Josh, before we get out of here for the night, I only got one thing to tell you. It's clobbering time!
No, it's not. No, it's not.
Anyway, that will end tonight's episode of Championship Ranks. Always fun debating all things NFL, college football, and the NBA, wrestling with you, Josh. Next week will be the last time we talk about college football for a little while, as we have a little bit of a break. We're going to find out, obviously, Sunday afternoon who the final four teams will be. We'll talk about that on Tuesday. Plus, all things NFL Week 13 and more. Again, make sure you guys go subscribe to us on Championship Rings. We're on YouTube at Championship Rings 216. Follow our other social media platforms at Rings Champion on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook at Rings Champion 216. Once again, we are usually on every Tuesday night at 6 p.m. This week, we had to do it at Wednesday at 6 p.m. due to a scheduling conflict. We'll be back next Tuesday, though. And Josh, you got the last words for tonight.
We are better than you, and you know it.